Here begins the third part of my Pencast conversation with Mr. Tony Smith, CBE, former Director General of the UK Border Force, now Managing Director of Fortinus Global, and Chair of the International Border Management and Technologies Association, or IBMATA. Part of your working strategy has been adaptability, moving to address what late-breaking news there is, and that it sounds like you carried that over into IBMATA, into your conferences, which makes a lot of sense. This is not a static environment that you're working against, but a highly dynamic one. You know, I find there's a very interesting parallel between IBMATA and your work and PenCP, the EU-funded project that hosts this podcast, which stands for the Pan-European Network of Customs Practitioners. And it has a sort of a very similar spirit to IBMATA in that it aims to create a network of customs experts, to boost innovation with particular attention to data and risk management, detection technologies, and laboratory equipment. So, and to create a kind of a collegial environment where people from various walks of life, both in public and private spheres, can share information. Or one of the members of the consortium is the UK Border Force, your old stomping grounds. So what are the challenges in bridging the gaps between customs and immigration on the one hand and the academic researchers and tech innovators who may be bringing very exciting new tools onto the market, but as you say, don't really know about the customs environment? What's the best way to get cutting edge technology into customs and helping create bridges, both institutional and personal, between academia/tech on the one hand and public service on the other?
Yeah, so that is about relationships, really, and that's about building relationships, and that's why you need a durable format. There are a number of other, organizations out there. We don't compete with anybody, really. We're a non-profit. Obviously we have to make some money out of sponsorship to cover our costs, but apart from that, we don't make money out of IBMATA. But I mean, I think the first thing is you have to be able to demonstrate to people that it's worth them engaging, spending time with you. It's worth them coming to your events. It costs a lot of money sometimes to, fly around the world to an event and book a hotel. And the feedback loop is going to be really important. So when you've done, keeping your ear to the ground, I don't mean necessarily just filling out a feedback form, but actually trying to gauge so that's why we're a membership organisation. We offer free membership to government people, but we do charge a small amount of membership for private entity companies. But once you're a member of an organisation, then you do have some say in how we go forward. And I think the more members you can get into your organisation, then the next step is to get your members talking to one another, not just to me. I sort of sit in the helicopter, but I mean, I don't really want to be radioing down to every single person on the ground. I want them to sort of get together around the campfire and talk to one another. So we create an environment where we facilitate a lot of that. So there's a lot of opportunities for breakout groups, sidebar discussions. We do have a small number of suppliers that do come and sponsor our events and set up stands, but no more than about a dozen or so. We're not an expo, where, the people with the products that they've got can actually come and sit in the forum and participate in the debate, present to the audience, as well as during coffee breaks, people can go out and they can demo what their latest product is, be that a new document reader or a new surveillance system, whatever it is. That's kind of worked really well. And for us, small is beautiful. We don't want to take over, we don't become the World Customs Organization or Congress. I mean, we normally don't go above 150, probably would be our tops. We're quite mobile in where we go, so we tend to go to hotels that have got sufficient, accommodation for that. We set up our own events. But it is, I think my advice to anyone who's in that game is you need to work hard on your relationships, and hard with your audience, and make sure that you're giving them what they want. What private industry mostly want is access to government officials. And they want that for a couple of reasons. I mean, obviously the end game is that they're looking for contracts and if there's something going on. But it's not so much that, it's more about understanding what's going on in different countries and where where governments are going 2 or 3, 5 years time on border technology, etc., which is why, and I think for the border agencies, and I spent a lot of time, as you know, working in a border agency, how would I know what the best technology is that's out there? Unless I went to an IBMATA event, I could get a lot of salesmen would come in and try and sell me something, but I really want to know, I want to have an in-depth conversation with what it is that I want, and then perhaps adapt products. We've added, we're looking at things like drive-through border, for example, at the moment, UK, drive-through border is a big topic all over the place. Singapore, US, UK, Canada, all looking at, is there a better way of getting vehicles across a border crossing point and everyone having to hand their passports through the window to a chap who looks at them and stamps them and scans them and all that. And well, there is, but I mean, nobody's got the perfect answer yet, but what we found rainbow groups have formed within IBMATA, and I didn't form them, they formed themselves. We create the atmosphere, if you like, for the rainbow to form, but then groups will come together and they'll meet at IBMATA and say, well, actually, we can do the registration bit of that. Oh, right, well, we're doing the border crossing bit. Oh, well, we've got the cameras.
Yeah.
Oh, but, and so suddenly you've got a consortium that becomes much, much more powerful, supply side, because actually they've got a solution rather than a product for a particular problem. About we've got miles long queues at our land borders of cars, and that's the problem that the border agency wants solving. They don't want to go and buy a camera. So it sort of creates that sort of happy medium of being able to bring people together from both sides, share information, share knowledge, and quite often partnerships will emerge, just form. From the basis of the fact that they're members of IBMATA. I think that's great, really. That's really good for me, because we want, in the end, to find best practice, to promote best practice, and to make the world a better place, and make borders more secure, but also, more fluid. And that's what we're all about. And we're finding that seems to be working in some places, at least.
That's very, very exciting. It must be wonderful to see these rainbow groups and spontaneous consortia just sort of take shape of their own power. You created the atmosphere, but then they give life to the idea. That's very, very exciting. So, PenCP itself, this project, focuses on accelerating innovation through a range of knowledge instruments like technology grants, challenge competitions, innovation awards, annual studies, expert reports. And I'm thinking out loud here, could these instruments be of some potential use to and interest to IBMATA and to your participants? Are there obvious ways in which PenCP can further IBMATA's goals and vice versa, ways in which IBMATA and PenCP can collaborate?
Yes, I think so. I mean, like I say, we're very open and collaborative at IBMATA. We're not in conflict, with other groups that are trying to do things similar to us. We are not specifically customs focus, and I think it's important to understand the scope of what IBMATA does. It's border management, which includes a lot more than customs. And so customs in the UK, customs is mainly freight, and even then, a lot of freight is more security, home office. So when you're talking customs, you need to figure out what is the audience you're trying to attract. You can find yourself getting into some quite complicated technical issues around movement of goods in terms of customs declarations, supply chain data, revenue, raising, so we don't dig deep into customs. I've got customs experts on my book, but when we start talking about, the ecosystem of trust and the single trade window and, how can you, facilitate revenue collection, that we do touch on it, but we don't drill down into it because we haven't got the time, frankly. And actually we don't want to, because we want to look at things through the lens of the border. And how the border works. And there's 26 different agencies that have got an interest in the UK border. I know that from personal experience, and customs is one of them. And customs might cover 2 or 3 functions, but basically there's a lot more going on at the border than customs, as there is for immigration and security. So we have quite a broad brush, and, we look at pre-entry and on entry and after entry as well. So, Sometimes find that it suits us to send people off, if you like, if they come to us and say, look, we really want to know a lot more about customs practices. We'd be very happy to refer them to you to say, well, actually, this is about as far as we go. But you might want to have a look at this particular organisation or that particular organisation who might have a more of a sort of a deeper knowledge and understanding of how specific customs processes work, depending on what it is. I mean, is it inspections? Is it regulation? Is it finance? Is it security? All of these aspects come under the customs umbrella, depending upon which country you're looking at. But different countries have a different approach to customs. Like I say, we tend to adopt the integrated approach. That's why things like, the US, UK model, where I think you've got a single border force, kind of works for us, because they're the front line at the border, and they're the ones that are making the decisions at the border. But there's a lot of transactional stuff that goes on between supply chains and customs and revenue authorities that perhaps take us a little bit off of our page. And so we're very happy to advise people that if you want more detail on that, then go there. And we would hope that others would reciprocate and say, well, have you thought about, if you're looking at the border more widely, not just customs, but you're looking about how integrated border management works, or the biometrics work for passengers, that sort of stuff, then have a look at IBMATA. And we're very sort of loosely connected to all of these topics, but we don't portray ourselves to be a specific customs organisation as such. We would prefer to call ourselves a border management association. That's why we've got the term border management, because that encompasses more things, I think, than just customs.
Coming back to your book, Changing Borders, A Kingdom Unlocked, which is published by Quadrant Books in 2022. Among the many quotes that got my attention is this: there are a few topics that foster more argument than immigration and border control. Some people want open borders and the complete free movement of people. Others want to build walls and fences to keep people out. Tensions run high on both sides and can divide governments and nations alike. So why do these tensions exist, and where do you stand in this debate?
Well,
simple question there.
I mean, I think I look back over my life, and there has never been a greater movement of people across the world than there is right now. I think COVID knocked the stuffing out of that for a year or two, but essentially, if you look at the rising tide of global movement of people, that's only on the up. And that's being driven by a number of market forces. I think in a much more socially aware world, where communications are much, much easier. You can send a WhatsApp manager across the planet within a second. You can post stuff on social media that anybody can see. There is clearly going to be, I think, a greater pressure in some original source countries to immigrate than there ever has been, be that for political unrest or climate change or whatever it is. And then there is a difficulty then of the countries to which they want to move, and the ability of governments in those countries, those receiving countries, to accept the numbers of people that would like to come. So I am not an open borders advocate. I don't think we could have it would be nice if there was a utopian world where we could all go and live in the nicest place on the planet, but I expect everybody would have flocked there, and the rest of the planet would be sort of dark and dismal place. So I do favour border control. I do favour immigration control. I think it is the right of a democratically elected government to determine what that policy should be, which means the people get a say. And I think that quote basically just reflects public opinion that, in my experience, people do come from different dynamics on this, and some, are more to the left, some are more to the right. But I do think each country has a duty to control its borders, on behalf of its population, and it needs to determine what policies it's going to adopt to ensure that only those people that they want to accept come in, and that those people that they don't want to accept do not come in. And likewise for those that are permitted to stay. Now, what's happened and why it's called a kingdom unlocked is that, when back in the day when I was an immigration officer at the border, if someone turned up at my desk at Heathrow with a false passport, and I was trained to look out for forgeries, and, I spent time so I wasn't the best forgery expert in the world, but someone had a dodgy passport, a dodgy stamp in it, or something wasn't right. And then I could sort of, stop and question them and perhaps have a look in their bags and determine that actually they weren't who they said they were, or they weren't genuine. Then I could simply serve a notice on the captain of the aircraft that brought them in, and they'd go straight back whence they came. I mean, even if they'd thrown their passport away, they'd still go back on the plane they came in on. And that was called immigration control. Now, if someone turns up without a document at most borders, they will claim asylum or human right or some other lever will be used, and they won't be sent straight back necessarily. They'll probably be admitted, sometimes for a very, very long period, into the country under various conditions of status about whether they've got somewhere to stay or whether they can work or not, and might never be removed. So we are seeing, I think, and this is certainly prevalent in the US southern border, but also here in Europe and the UK, to more and more human smuggling. Where, criminal gangs are pervading this. This is international organised crime, where people who don't qualify for a visa or a permit to cross the border will throw themselves at the mercy of human smugglers who are the worst of us, will exploit them to the umpteenth degree to extort money from them in one form or another, to put them quite often in very, very dangerous circumstances to evade border control. And I don't think that's right. And I think we do have a duty, I think those of us that are on the side of law enforcement, to put the smugglers out of business as best we can. The problem is this is a very lucrative business, and there is a never-ending supply chain of people that are prepared to, for one reason or another, fuel that supply chain. So, I think we do need to send a message to the smugglers that they're not going to get away with this. And that means if people do turn up at your border undocumented, it doesn't follow that they will be admitted and allowed to stay indefinitely, because so long as that message goes through and, they say whatever you like, it doesn't matter. I really, really want to go and live in the US, and I don't care if I have to get another mortgage or sell a house or sell a land to do it, and someone can promise me that I will get there and I will get to stay there. I've done my duty to my family and, to my heritage. Now, I don't blame them for that. You can see why that would be quite an attractive proposition, because you feel you're doing the best for yourself and your family. But you're not actually. You're doing the worst for yourself and your family. You're putting themselves in bondage debt to some very serious, nasty people who could cause you much more serious damage than that. And what we really need is a world where, we are encouraging people to develop the lands in which they live, and, try and tackle the problems that at source, and try and get, other countries to step up and ensure that they have policies and processes that it's not worth, pervading border control in this way, and that, there is an incentive to remain in your own country. And yes, of course, go abroad if you want to go abroad. Everyone wants to travel, go abroad and learn, go abroad and study, go abroad and spend some time abroad. But ultimately, particularly if you're the brightest and the best, we want you to come back here again and build capacity in our own health service, our own accounting system, our own financial system institutions. That's what worries me, is that, quite often some of the people that do arrive, irregular migrants, could have probably contributed a very significant amount to their own country. And I was absolutely, I know I said probably after the book, but certainly if you read our reports of Johannesburg, and we went to Kenya as well to listen to some of the African development. There is some fantastic talent in Africa, unbelievable talent that are producing technologies that are out of this world, that wouldn't even want to come to America or the UK. They see such a fantastic opportunity to build new infrastructure, identity structures, the internet, banking facilities, the economic development capabilities. They really, really, you want to get people to be passionate about that, passionate about how can you make your country better, and what can you learn from other countries, and how can you encourage your younger people to stay where they are, to actually, or at least to come back if they go abroad to study. Yes, by all means go for self-development, come back, but your future does not lie in, some back street in Los Angeles or London where you're begging for money, where you're not particularly welcomed. And actually, this is a myth that you are being sold by criminals. And that really gets to me, because I've dealt with them. I know what they're like. They don't care if people die, frankly. It's all about the money, and it's all about the crime, and it is a proliferation, because the more money that gets invested, that more people will walk towards that. And that's why border agencies are really up against it, be that in the States or the UK or anywhere else, is because of this constant pressure from smugglers to bring people in irregular means across their border, and then to ensure that once they're there, they get to stay there.
This concludes the third episode of my Pencast conversation with Mr. Tony Smith, CBE, former Director General of the UK Border Force, now Managing Director of Fortinus Global and founding Chair of IBMATA. Join us soon for the next episode of our talk. Thank you.